DC is not dark and gritty, bro. There's this misconception about DC Comics that's given the public the wrong idea about them. I think it's been the driving force behind the loud minority of people who've been criticizing James Gunn's Superman in the upcoming DC universe, which I want to say is indeed a loud minority. Most people I've seen so far, they've been pretty positive about it, especially with that recent trailer dropping. With that said, there's this belief that DC's kind of like darker and grittier or more serious than Marvel, and I don't think that's accurate. While DC does go to these places just like Marvel does, it's not the default setting of the entire universe. I think this idea mainly gained traction over the last 10 years, and I think I know why. Now, 3 particular storylines, Flashpoint, The Dark Knight Returns, and Injustice, are mostly to blame. Now, don't get me wrong, these stories are fire and they're among some of the best that DC has to offer. Well, at least 2 of them are anyway. Flashpoint and The Dark Knight Returns are legendary. I just think Injustice is a little overrated. I get why people enjoy it though. Regardless, they all share a common tone. They're bleak, violent, and in some cases straight up dystopian. And they just so happen to be among the core inspiration behind Zack Snyder's DC films. Now look, I'm not here to bash Snyder. I won't pretend I was the biggest fan of his vision. I like Man of Steel and some of the ideas he was going for. I think his vision was stylish and ambitious, but overall it was just not what I had hoped for personally. But that's neither here nor there. The thing is, his vision was just his interpretation of the DC universe, not the default setting. See, the problem here is that for many people, the Snyder films were their first or only real exposure to DC. And since the movies are the main way casual audiences consume superhero content, it's easy to see how that tone became synonymous with the entire brand. And I think that's unfair to DC. It somewhat boxed them into this grim aesthetic that only represents one piece of a much larger universe, and in some ways it's hurt the brand. There's so many characters and storylines that we haven't even delved into or touched and seen on screen yet. What sucks is now when DC does try to go into their more colorful or more whimsical side and introduce characters like Crypto, who's been around since 1955, mind you, some people think it's off-brand when it's not at all. As someone who grew up watching Justice League Unlimited, Teen Titans, Static Shock, Young Justice, and the other animated shows and movies, DC never felt dark per se. Outside of Batman the Animated Series, which I watched a little later on because it was slightly before my time, none of the DC media I grew up on gave me the impression that their universe was inherently darker. Truth be told, I've never heard this narrative before the Snyderverse. If anything, I will compare the DC universe to the Invincible universe. Yeah, stuff gets brutal, but both worlds are pretty fantastical, colorful, and in some ways goofy. I don't look at either universe as necessarily dark by default. They can just get dark. I mean, come on, man. This is a universe with talking gorillas, a sentient, gender fluid, teleporting street, a motherfucker named Captain Boomerang. Like, come on, dog. There's an inherent goofiness built into the universe that you can't undercut with seriousness all the time. You know, you can't Batmanify everything. DC is huge. For every dark corner, there's a bright cosmic odyssey. For every Batman brooding in the rain, there's a squad of rainbow-colored, emotion-powered space cops. Speaking of space cops, DC's cosmic side is kind of what made me appreciate Superman more as an adult. As a kid, I wasn't really too big into the character just because I thought he was too overpowered, but I came to appreciate him more with the off-world, Jack Kirby-inspired adventures and enemies. The stories that are hard to make grounded and practical and realistic without kind of leaning into more of the more whimsical and goofy side of this universe. And with stuff like that, I feel like there's only but so grounded you can get. I mean, you got lanterns of every color. You got an entire planet that's a lantern. The Justice League's first enemy together was a giant star. There's almost like an inherent goofiness built into it that you can't make but so serious. And if that turns you off, then maybe DC isn't exactly what you thought it was in the first place. Personally, I'm excited for what James Gunn is doing. From what we've seen, he's getting deep in that DC bag, pulling out obscure characters, references that only real fans would probably recognize. This isn't just a surface level reboot. This is a world where Batmite could exist.
Batmite? The 2-foot-tall interdimensional imp who stands Batman. I'd rather be with him.
Is he a real guy?
Yeah.
And that's dope. Not because I'm necessarily eager to see him on screen, but just because of what it implies. It speaks to the depth of which this universe is going to be digging into DC lore and history. It feels like Gunn is trying to capture the whole universe. Its humor, its weirdness, its darkness, its lightheartedness, and its legacy. And I get that his style isn't for everyone, but he isn't going to be the only one directing these films. If everything pans out, we'll be getting movies in different styles, unique to each director. So if you really love DC, not just Batman or the DCEU, I honestly can't see why you wouldn't want to see this universe blossom and why you would want to stop it in its tracks before it got started. I'm not saying DC shouldn't go dark. I'm just saying it shouldn't be reduced to only that, because it's never just been that. It's always been big, bold, weird, colorful, inspiring, all of that. What makes DC special isn't just its edge, it's its scope. From Metropolis to Apocalypse, from Batmite to Blackest Night, this universe has room for it all, and I'm ready to see all of it.